Welcome back. The Black Eagles podcast returns for episode 7. And today, things return to normalcy. I, Sinan Sporting, live from New York, am very glad to present to you my co-host and returnee, Kaan. That's your cue.
Yeah, thank you for the warm welcome and the applause from our audience, of course, which I'm sure Sinan will insert post-production.
Yes, yeah. Man, again, the fourth wall. You keep breaking it down.
Break the walls! So yeah, we are back with some football talk now. Of course, the previous 2 episodes was me interviewing some experts on the Portuguese and the Croatian national team, which I thought were very fun conversations. I really enjoyed talking to those people. So, if we just have their eyes on, or if we bring in a Portuguese player or a Croatian player in the future that we need some information on, I'm sure we'll have either Jan or Ante back on to talk some more football. But for the time being, let's focus on what's going on right now with the World Cup, which I'm sure you've been enjoying, Sinan.
Oh, very much. I mean, back to Beşiktaş talk exclusively, but yeah, we can't ignore this tournament that's happening right now. It's an interesting one. It's very interesting in the context of a New Yorker because the U.S. isn't in it, which that brings down the sort of general level of excitement in the city for the cup in general. Like, there's not that many people around in the bars. I mean, there still are, actually. I take it back. They're full. People are excited, but not to the extent of, when the U.S. is in it and people have that hope initially. But still, especially in New York, because of the huge populations from all over the world, like Colombia has a very large presence on the streets. They still haven't even played yet, but they're out in force. The Mexicans were insane in New York City today. It was really a ball. Like, everywhere you went, you had orange honking, green shirts everywhere. It was kind of amusing for like to hear like all the ignorant Americans like, what happened today? Why is everyone wearing green? Like, people were like, there was I heard something like, it's not St. Patrick's Day. Like, people seemed thoroughly confused on the one hand, but on the other hand, it was a lot of fun for those in the know.
Over here it just feels like Christmas, man, for a month. Just the entire month of the World Cup is it just feels like it's Christmas. Very fun period, I think. I love just being able to have football on all day. And, sometimes that brings with it that you are not 100% paying attention to every game. I think if you do that, you're going to get fatigue at some point, World Cup fatigue.
Yeah, I was trying, but my main problem here is just that they're on so early. Like this morning, I missed the first game, and I actually slept through like a couple of minutes of the second one even, because I was so backlogged on sleep from waking up early for all the other ones before the previous days. So yeah, it catches up to you.
Yeah, here in Belgium, people are just streaming it on their work, they're just watching on their computer or something and streaming the games. Fortunately, I think for most people that when the Belgian side plays, they'll have like a television up in their working at their work, and they'll be able to watch it. But of course, tonight Belgium played the final match of the day, so most people will be home already. I know for my girlfriend who works in the hospital, they actually have a TV there, and they were even going to do a pizza party and stuff like that.
Hopefully the surgeons hopefully are in another room.
Nah, she works in the lab, so it's for biologists and stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't know if they do that in the US. If the US
say, I mean, it's definitely not to the same extent, but yeah, no, I have noticed increasingly more than ever before. People are posting images of TVs in their office, or like larger computer screens, sort of dedicated to the games. So yeah, it's happening. It's happening even in the US. Like the game is finally taking over.
But let's just talk a little bit about the World Cup. Of course, we're not going to be going into it super deep, but we just want to run down a little bit the results of the Beşiktaş players involved. Do you want to take the lead on this?
Another World Cup thing is that 2026 has been confirmed to be in New York City, so perhaps we'll be reporting live.
Canada.
The Black Eagles podcast will be reporting live from New York for that. Hopefully Turkey can be involved and more Beşiktaş players as well, but we'll see about that.
Yeah, Canada, the United States, and Mexico outdid the Moroccan bid, of course. So 2000.
Atiba Hutchinson will be like 50 years old. Maybe he'll make a comeback for the national team.
Well, let's see. He's 35 now, so that's 8 years down the road. So he'll be 43.
43.
43. You know, I mean, there's still some players playing at 43. Look, I mean, there's a guy in Japan who's like 51 and he's still playing. I mean, you never know. In 8 years, Kyle Larin could be playing for Real Madrid or something. You never know.
Don't say that. In 8 years, Beşiktaş will be the next Real Madrid. Come on, you got to be an optimist.
I've been saying that since I was a kid. That like, oh, we're gonna win the Champions League one day. Yeah, I don't know. And then there's that kid Beşiktaş have recently been linked to, Alphonso Davies. Who plays in the MLS, of course, like 17 years old. It looks like a really good talent. So in 8 years' time, he'll be only 25, or 25, 26 years old. So who knows where he'll be at that point. But there's right now, I don't think it's been confirmed yet by FIFA whether they will automatically qualify all three nations, because of course that would kind of upset the qualifiers in North America, because
I
three of the four biggest nations would be automatically qualified. That would be kind of weird.
It would leave very few openings for other CONCACAF nations, right? How many do they have? More than 3 spots?
No.
That's it, right? So
who do they have right now? Mexico, Costa Rica, and who else is in? I mean, I guess the third one has to play playoffs and see if they manage. I mean, I think there's only 2.
Panama.
Oh, I thought Panama was South America for some reason.
No, that's the Panama Canal, man. That's Panama. And there are other guys like Trinidad, Tobago, and
where Atiba Hutchinson is descendant from.
Exactly.
His grandma still lived there and everything. She died 2 years ago,
but also Jamaica sometimes has a chance.
Jamaica.
So, I don't know if they would open up another spot for CONCACAF, or what I've actually heard is they might
be 48 teams, so there probably will be like 4 or 5 spots, I guess.
Oh, there you go. That opens things up.
The World Cup's going from 32 to 48 nations by 2022, I think. So
that answers that. But so anyway, I did hear that they might have to choose between Canada and Mexico as the co-host, essentially.
But
that's more.
Anyway, that's very, very far down the road. So let's talk about 2018. Let's talk about the World Cup. Portugal, Spain. What a match! Did you see it?
I did. That was everything you'd hope for in a World Cup match, I'd say.
The first really good World Cup game, the one that really lived up to expectations. Cristiano Ronaldo scoring a hat-trick for Portugal, Diego Costa scoring a brace, and Nacho Rodriguez scoring the third goal for Spain. Portugal taking an early lead through a penalty in the 3rd minute. Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, converting that. I think it was Nacho who brought him down actually for the penalty, and that's a returning scenario we see in throughout this first round of the World Cup, where the penalty, the guy who created the penalty, then later on goes on to score, because of course in the Denmark versus Peru game, which was an amazing game too. Peru really playing great, but didn't get what they deserved there. But
they earned a point at least. That was unfortunate.
Yeah, and the guy that created a penalty there for Peru, and Peru unfortunately missed that penalty. He ended up, Poulsen. He ended up later scoring the winning goal. So we kind of saw the same thing here in Spain, where Nacho first gives away a penalty, and then later on goes on to score. Second goal for Portugal, really kind of a blunder on the supposed best goalkeeper in the world, David De Gea's part.
Yeah, that was actually very surprising.
I'm not a huge De Gea fan. I'm not a huge De Gea fan. He's a great goalkeeper, no doubt, but I don't buy into he's the best in the world kind of thing, which we've also seen recently with Ederson and Alisson from Brazil. And I just think, despite the fact that Manuel Neuer missed the majority of the season, I mean, he's still number one to me, and I think Thibaut Courtois is ahead of these guys as well, despite not having the best season with Chelsea and stuff like that.
That could be your Belgian bias showing.
No, I think he's proven it throughout his career.
No, he is a good keeper. He's very much a good keeper.
What he has achieved, and he's only still 25 years old, I believe. 26 maybe. But he's achieved so much already in his career. Who knew Alisson 2 years ago? 4 years ago, Brazil was scraping by to get a decent goalkeeper and still had to go with Julio Cesar. And now they have two good ones. But back to that Portugal-Spain game. Pepe, of course, playing 90 minutes. The first goal from Diego Costa came after, to me, pretty blatant fall from Costa on Pepe, which wasn't called. The VAR didn't do anything about that either. He kind of just elbowed him in the face, and then went on to score the goal. And some of the comments I saw were like, well, it's because it's Pepe that it's Pepe. He's following Pepe, so it's good to go. And someone else, a friend of mine who has a podcast in Dutch, really good podcast by the way, which if you do speak Dutch, I highly recommend. It's called Neutrale Kijkers. I definitely recommend it, with Jordi Amali and Peter Buurman. Those two, they really they basically said, what they should do with Diego Costa and Pepe, just put them in an MMA cage and let them fight it out, which I thought was funny. But I think that Pepe's reputation is kind of, he has a reputation, but I think he's really toned it down a lot in the last couple of years of his career. I think the really nasty falls that he once did aren't really there anymore. But Pepe at one point, he was the type of defender that really was breaking people into, and I think he just doesn't do that anymore, or at least a lot less frequently. So that reputation might not be very warranted anymore, but he's still going to be carrying that around until he retires. But, regardless, spectacular game. Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, stealing the show with that hat-trick, that late equalizer from a free kick. And, anyone who kind of knows Cristiano Ronaldo is that he doesn't really score a lot of free kicks. This is his first ever free kick goal at a tournament. But what a free kick it was. And fantastic game. I think Spain especially made a good impression despite all the drama going on around them, with them sacking their coach 2 days before the tournament starts. Of course, appointing Fernando Hierro, a former Real Madrid central defender. Pepe played 90 minutes. Ricardo Quaresma came on in the 69th minute, and he did quite well, I thought. He was immediately threatening, really put pressure on the Spanish defense, and even came close to scoring the winner late in the game. But his shot was blocked, I think, by Sergio Ramos, I believe it was. But imagine if Quaresma would have gotten the win there for Spain. That would have been so awesome for him. For Portugal, sorry. Fantastic game there. And both our guys coming in action. Pepe, of course, like we expected, would be a starter, played the full 90 minutes. Quaresma, like we expected, super sub coming from the bench, and he did his part.
Yeah, I actually thought, they were down 3-2 when he came on, and he immediately made his impact felt. He immediately got involved in the attack, was bringing the ball forward. As you mentioned, he had that. I mean, it really sort of was reminiscent of one of those goals he scored for us in the Europa League in that kind of like golden run of his, like where he's just single-handedly decided he was gonna like lift his team and bring them, and of course the difference being that like he went up against Spain and Sergio Ramos and like someone of that quality. But nonetheless,
still,
it was impressive.
He really had them. He had them on the ropes there for a minute. And Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, star of that game. No doubts there. We don't want to make it seem like Quaresma was the star, but he had a good. I mean, he came on. He had 24, 25 minutes of play, including extra time, and he did really well.
Well, what's interesting, what I'll say about him and Ronaldo is that he has a good rapport with Ronaldo.
They're BFFs.
But as such, Ronaldo has enough respect for him that he actually does sort of distribute the ball to him more and kind of let him play in a way that he doesn't as much with some of his other teammates, and so it probably benefits Portugal to some extent. At least that was what it sort of felt like late in that game. And granted, like everyone was tired and it was.
Yeah, but they literally are. They literally are like best friends, and they've been playing together for more than 20 years, I think, because they were both from the Sporting Lisbon Academy. They're only a couple months apart in age. They've been playing together for so long, and they've played together, for the youth teams of Portugal, for the youth teams of Sporting, for the first team, I guess. So they've just known each other for so long, and they are great friends. And you can see that, they're always together on training. They're always together when they're like in their off season. They're great, friends, basically, best friends or whatever. So you can see that. But I think that's also, I think that it doesn't really impact Quaresma being on the national team. I think he's earned his way on the national team for sure. With his performances in recent years. And he had a good game there. So let's move on to the Croatia game. Don't know if you saw that one. Croatia beating Nigeria 2-0. That was a really bad match, I think. Not living up to expectations.
I was going to say, it was probably an okay match, but it was bad in the context of it had... Many people had expected so much of it, and so much of Nigeria. And they really did not come through, I have to say. They played right into Croatia's game plan, it really felt like, from the beginning.
The thing I think what people were disappointed with Nigeria is that, these African sides, they're especially in a side like Nigeria, are capable of playing some very entertaining and enthusiastic football. And it just felt like they played with their handbrake on the entire match. And I think that just, kind of soured people on it. Croatia it's a European guy, but honestly, I can't think of it right now.
It felt like he was he's been maybe trying to implement some kind of a system onto these players that he wants to play with, or that he's been used to playing with. That like, as you said, kind of had them, it looked like they were putting the brakes on the kind of football that they would be wanting to play. It was sad because I had a lot of hopes for that Nigerian side, to be honest. But not enough.
The thing is with that, and their coach, by the way, is Gernot Rohr, German, I believe, with French roots or something. Thing with that is, I think an argument I heard from my friend Jordi on his podcast is, you're going to the World Cup, you have 3 games, most likely you're probably not going to qualify for that next round. Why not just go out there and do your best, try to, entertain people, try to play good football, and, look at Mexico. They did that. They just went out there, they went for Germany's throat, and they actually got a result. And they didn't do it by being pragmatic. Yes, in the second half, they were forced to sit back and defend. They were forced to because Germany was just pressing and pounding on the door. But here,
I think that Beşiktaş fans were still in Timo Werner's head. He was really not in good form in that match.
He had one good run, I think. early on a really good Kimmich pass. That was a decent chance, but now we're going to mix in everything.
Yeah.
So back to Croatia, Nigeria, 2-0 the final score, I believe. The first one was an own goal. Second one was a Luka Modric penalty. Domagoj Vida played 90 minutes for Croatia. I think he was solid. Really, he had a good game. He had one really important block on probably Nigeria's only chance of the game or something.
And he was very active the whole game too. He really matched Nigeria's pace.
In general, I mean, the Croatian defense didn't really have that much work.
No.
I thought that Lovren had a couple of hiccups like he usually does, but Vida was solid. No hiccups at all for him.
Goodbye, Liverpool. Yeah. Goodbye.
Very good game for Domagoj Vida from that perspective. But, I mean, didn't have too much work, wasn't really tested, so can't really say that he was superb or anything. He just did what he had to do, did his job. So that's the three currently active Beşiktaş players in action at the World Cup. And then, of course, Duško Tosić, we should talk about him as well. Of course, we've sold him now to Guangzhou Evergrande, but in China. But he's still a Beşiktaş player. He's still a Black Eagle. And he
at heart, at heart, he's always a
And Serbia did really well. They beat Costa Rica 1-0. Goal, a really spectacular free kick goal from Kolarov, of course, the AS Roma wingback, former Manchester City. Of course, we were linked with him for a while as well, and he had one of his vintage free kicks and really got Serbia the deserved win. They should have scored more. Alexander Mitrovic, who we've been linked with in the past as well, former Anderlecht man, currently at Newcastle United. He missed two really big chances, but weighed on the defense. Costa Rica didn't really do too much, but it was good.
Mexico is the class of CONCACAF, is what it seems like thus far.
Costa Rica is a team I usually tend to enjoy watching, but Serbia was just too good. And this was actually a really good game. Serbia and both Costa Rica and Serbia played attacking football. But, Costa Rica was kind of forced to defend, of course, because Serbia was dominating them. But it was a good game. One of the better games that I've seen so far in the World Cup. And there's been a lot of stinkers, but there's a handful of good games. The Spain-Portugal match is, of course, one of those. Peru-Denmark was good.
Peru was robbed. They've played so well. In fact, they've been one of the more impressive teams in this World Cup, I'd say. And
they played really.
My expectations.
They played fun football, but at the end, I mean, if you can't finish, and Denmark kind of got away with it there because they were dominated from start to finish. They had like 15 good minutes, and in those 15 good minutes, they scored.
And then the class of an individual, right? Like, to back up a sort of the argument that a guy like Mo Salah could have had an impact in that first game is sort of fortified by that like an individual can have that kind of an impact if they're given the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And Egypt had kept their first match close.
Yeah, I mean, they lost in the 89th minute against Uruguay, and let's say Mo Salah would have been 100% fit and playing. Who's not to say that he wouldn't have had one of his brilliant moments and then put Egypt ahead, and then you have a different game.
For sure.
But, there's been a lot of negative football so far in the World Cup, and it's something you're going to see a lot at these tournaments where most of the coaches are pragmatists who, that's just the way it is in national team football, even more so than it is in club football. Yeah. But we've seen a couple of good games so far, and two of our players were involved in probably the best one.
Yeah.
And then Duško Tosić, our former player, was probably involved in the third one of the other best ones of the three best games thus far.
Well, and so both of our central defenders, outside of that Portugal game, contributed to clean sheets as well, which is a fun fact.
Yeah, true. Yeah, Duško Tosić clean sheet, Domagoj Vida clean sheet, and of course Pepe and Portugal. Yeah, but they played against one of the top favorites to win, despite them sacking their coach.
Yeah. And particularly if Diego Costa is going to be playing at that level in this tournament, they could, that was for me the main question mark I had for Spain was whether or not they had enough talent up front. And so yeah, that's a formidable force for Pepe to have been dealing with a on form Diego Costa, which I haven't seen in a while.
Plus, he needed a fall to get that first goal. That should have really been. It should have been disallowed.
Yeah, but the VAR, right? Freaking.
Yeah, lots of stuff to talk about with that, but this is unfortunately not a World Cup podcast, and I think we spent plenty of time on
enough.
now already. So let's move on to the meat and potatoes of this podcast. Let's talk some Beşiktaş transfer rumors.
Yeah. And to tie into, to segue from the World Cup into transfers, why don't you start us off with some stuff about Lang of Switzerland, who did just play in the World Cup as a substitute.
Yeah, he came.
Is there any movement on that front?
The latest on that one is that Lang did agree a contract with Beşiktaş, like a principal agreement, supposedly according to NTV Sport, I believe. But
how
Basel,
reliable do you rate NTV Sport?
I really consider them kind of to be hit and miss. I mean, they're not fanatic or photomatch by no stretch of the imagination. They do, because those guys just blatantly make stuff up all the time. But NTV, they can be first on reporting stuff sometimes and really be accurate and on the money. But they throw a lot of stuff out there and just try to throw some stuff against the wall and see what sticks sometimes. This with the Michael Lang thing, the main thing there seems to be Basel asking for a very high fee of 6 million euros for a player that still has 1 year left on his contract. But of course, he's 27 years old. He plays for the Swiss national team. Had a really good season with Basel. Also in the Champions League, Basel did really well. They got just as far as Beşiktaş did. Let's not forget that, because we'd like to think that we did really well in the Champions League, and we did, I think. But Basel also got through the groups. They didn't do it unbeaten. They didn't win their group, but they still got through the groups. So that's still.
And they've sort of progressively been doing that a little bit more regularly, or at least being competitive in the Champions League. So.
Of course, Basel kind of have the advantage that they're basically in the Champions League every season. They're not going to be next season, actually, because Young Boys won the title in Switzerland.
Wow.
But usually they are in the Champions League because they always seem to win that Swiss title. Yeah. So they're in there consistently, and they do quite well on a regular basis. But
it's like a 10-team league, right? That's not particularly deep in
10
terms
or
of
12.
It's not particularly deep in terms of the talent that's competing for the title regularly, right? I mean, Young Boys are Young Boys the sort of primary competition for Basel typically?
Yeah, and they've played against Fenerbahce a couple times in the last 5-6 years.
Yeah, and they beat them even, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and that. So about that 6 million, that's Beşiktaş aren't going to pay that.
No.
So I don't know if it's true, whether Lang actually agreed terms.
Well, let me modify that. I could see Beşiktaş paying 6 million for a player if they had already locked down cheap options in other positions. So like if they lock down like a free transfer on a striker or a number 10, I could see them maybe like spending a little bit more on someone on another need. But I don't think right back is going to be a primary need in that regard. And I think if they were to do that, it would much more likely be for a striker or a number 10.
Yeah.
And them getting a cheaper like right back instead, like an Opare, for example. Not to rub that into people.
They're not going to pay a 6 million fee for a right back at this point.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. And maybe you can get that price down to 5 or 4, but I don't even think Beşiktaş are going to be wanting to pay that, because moving on to the next rumor, Rafael from Lyon, former Manchester United right back, of course, Brazilian, 27 years old as well. Beşiktaş have an agreement there supposedly with Lyon. For 2.5 million. That's a lot more in the realistic ballpark of what Beşiktaş would be willing to pay for a player. And this is a true thing. This is actually, I can confirm that Rafael, that's actually true. They definitely are interested in him. There definitely are talks. The reason I know this is because Marcelo has been talking with, and Marcelo and his wife, of course, Marcelo, former Beşiktaş player. They have
Marcelo Guedes, for the record, not Marcelo, who's in the World Cup.
No, but why would people think that?
Yeah, right. I guess, fair enough.
There's only one.
With the World Cup on people's mind, But for us Beşiktaş fans, there's only one Marcelo.
There's been stuff that we've seen on that where Marcelo's wife has talked to people, and the DMs have come up. Print screens of the DMs have come up on social media where she admits that they've spoken to him and all that stuff, and told him how great Istanbul is, how great Beşiktaş is, and stuff like that. So we can definitely confirm that these rumors are true. Whether the agreement on $2.5 million, we'll have to wait and see. And I think this is probably going to be our new right back. Like we said in previous episodes, Opar is kind of like a backup. I think Rafael's probably going to be the next guy, but it's kind of been a couple of days since we've heard anything really in terms of developments on this, because of course we had our episodes of the World Cup preview, so we didn't really have the chance to address a lot of transfer rumors. So this is kind of a couple of days old already. Not much development has gone on, but I think we're going to kind of see that throughout the World Cup. I think stuff is going to really start kicking in gear once the group stages are over. That's just the way it's going to be in terms of the transfer market in general.
And Rafael is not on the national side, right?
No, he's not. But that still doesn't stop that. But personally, I would prefer us to kind of make quick work of some of these transfers, because, of course, we have a pretty early European campaign for the qualifiers for Europa League, so we shouldn't be waiting around too much. But you know how Beşiktaş work. They take their time. They try to get the best price. They try to get the best possible deal. And at the end of the day, you can't really fault them for trying to save some money. And Rafael is probably going to be our new right back as it currently stands.
Yeah. And not to do this every episode, but again, in the context of what Beşiktaş has gone through with Yıldırım Demirören and that whole era of overspending and getting us into huge financial debt and kind of setting us back a generation, essentially. Especially in that context, you cannot knock being cautious. And, if that does take a little more time, then so be it. But yeah, get a good player and get as good of a deal as you can. And let's keep the ship sailing financially, right? Like, that's a key part of getting out of this FFP stuff, I think.
Yep. So a quick summary then on the right back position, which Şenol Güneş has explicitly told that he wants a new player for due to Gökhan Gönül's injury proneness. So to quickly put a bow around that, we have Opara currently on hold, so to speak, who has an agreement on a free transfer, but Beşiktaş is still looking at other possibilities. Michael Lang being one of those. Supposedly a personal agreement with the player is in place, but Basel still wants a lot of money. Then there's Rafael from Lyon, where Beşiktaş have apparently agreed a 2.5 or something in that ballpark, €2.5 million deal with Lyon, and also have agreed on personal terms, supposedly. So we'll have to wait and see. But as it currently stands, Rafael looks to be the most likely player to be brought in for that position.
Additionally, there have been rumors of teams looking at Gökhan Gönül. Have you?
No.
It's not particularly.
I've heard it. It's BS. It's not true.
If it were possible, however, even if those rumors themselves maybe not so much, it could, it could have value for. There could be value in keeping Opare around as a backup in that scenario as well, right? So even if we got Rafael, if we could make some money off Gönül,
the foreign limits, right? The foreign limit has been changed, and we are allowed to have 11 foreigners on the pitch at one point, and we're allowed to have 14 in total. But to double down on a right back position with 2 foreigners, that's a little bit overkill. We do have 14 foreigners already, so definitely no. Plus, I mean, the offer there that you're referring to is supposedly the $4.5 million offer from Fulham, but that's not true. That's just media fabrication. And Gökhan Gönül.
But I guess what I mean to say is though, if an offer did come in where we could make some money off of Gökhan Gönül, I wouldn't at all be abject to it. I wouldn't mind. You know, if we were bringing in Rafael, you know, I'd almost feel like it'd be a disservice to Gökhan Gönül to put him in that kind of a role where he would really not be playing very much. You know, I think he still wants to play at this end of his
Why would
career.
you think he would be playing? I think if he's fit, he'd probably still be the first choice, at least the first season.
Really? You think so? Over Rafael?
Why not? Rafael isn't the world leader.
I mean, but I think he fits. Yeah, tying into what we've sort of discussed in previous episodes, I think Rafael fits the vision of what Şenol Güneş has in mind for what he's looking for in his fullbacks, and I think Rafael has more to offer in the attack, you know, and maybe at least in terms of like balancing attack with defense.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so? You rate Gökhan Gönül over Rafael right now?
I think they're very similar, and I think Gökhan Gönül is a great player when he's fit.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great player. I think that the criticism that he gets is exaggerated. I think you might be a little bit over-influenced by Salih's constant bitching now.
No, actually, you get me wrong. I actually quite liked his game throughout the season, and I've said it in that forum as well. Like we put up the best defense in the league again. You know, like we've consistently played great defense. I don't see defense as a huge issue for that team, and I think he contributed to that. But I actually thought, and I am where I'm actually ignorant is at the sort of level that Rafael is at. And that's why I had even asked, like, is he with the national team? You know, I thought he may have, from what Lyon fans had sort of said he could be capable of. I mean, maybe that speaks to where they feel like Beşiktaş is, even to some extent, where they're like, oh, he could be good for you guys. You know, like maybe there's a sort of
shouldn't put too much stock in what fans say. Yeah. Most fans are just fans, you know. They just
but like I look.
I mean, no.
When a player's leaving, and when a player's leaving, I think fans have a tendency to try to like legitimize that in their mind and like think of reasons why they're okay with it. So when fans say positive things about a guy that's departing, I tend to give that a bit of credence, you know. But you're right. I mean, it's not like experts telling. Like I do come from ignorance. So what I'm more surprised. It's not that you hold Gökhan Gönül in a high esteem. It's more, I guess, that you don't really rate Rafael, maybe.
No, it's not that I don't rate him. It's just the fact that I think Gökhan's good, and I think that he's Turkish, and I think that Şenol Güneş is always going to prefer a Turk over a foreigner if they're on a similar level. And, you know, Şenol Güneş has a sort of loyalty with his players that want trophies for him. Now, if Rafael's going to come in and he's immediately going to start putting in phenomenal performances in training and stuff like that, and he plays him in a game, in an official game, and he does well, then I'm sure that's, you know, there'll be stuff there. But the thing with Rafael is he's going to have plenty of chances to convince Şenol Güneş, because with Gökhan Gönül, he has that injury proneness issue. So he definitely will have his opportunities, but I don't think that. Look, I mean, if we were to sell, if an actual attractive offer would come in for Gökhan Gönül, I mean, given his age, given his injury proneness, yes, I would sell him.
Situation.
However, I wouldn't get another foreigner to replace him with, because that's just, you know, like I said, the foreigner limit is still a factor. It's not as big of a factor as it once was, but you're only allowed to have 14 foreigners, which I mean, that's a really decent amount of foreigners you're allowed.
I mean, yeah, compared to, again, like previous generations, that's actually very nice.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you have to be putting 2 foreigners in every position, because then you're not, you know, then you're going to need 22 foreign spots. You know, we already have a foreign goalkeeper. We already have 2 foreign center backs. We already have Adriano. Then you would add Rafael to the mix. Maybe Atiba if he extends. I think when you get a foreigner, the intention should always be that he plays regularly.
No, I'm not disagreeing with that sentiment. I mean, again, obviously it depends on the scenario, and if we're in a position where we need to scramble, like if someone comes in with an offer for Gökhan Gönül that's too good to refuse, and we need to scramble to get a backup, and we have the spot open, I wouldn't, like in that kind of a context, it's good. But it's not fair to Opare to assume that he wouldn't have already signed somewhere else by then, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, if it's like if you do get like a offer too good to refuse, kind of like you had with Dusko Tosic, then yeah. But I think maybe because of his Turkish status, Gökhan's value is still a little bit bigger than Tosic, who is a foreigner, despite the fact that Tosic's value to the first team might be a little bit. It's difficult because of Gökhan's injury proneness, but I think that Turkish status still has a certain value because of the foreign limit, and with all the talk that has been, it's cooled down fortunately. But if Erdogan decides he wants to push it through, that foreigner limit could be going back really soon. I mean, he tried to push it a couple of months ago, and it didn't take. But if you just know if he really pushes on it, that it's going to happen. So I wouldn't be too comfortable with the current formula of the foreigner limit. So I wouldn't be bringing in foreigners for backup positions, tying them in for 3-year contracts or whatever, and then maybe have a situation where you can't use them or have to sell them or something in the future. And the fact of the matter is that you're going to probably have to sell your starters then, because nobody's going to want to buy your backups. So you shouldn't be using foreigners as backups, in my opinion, unless you have young guys like Kyle Lauren who are up and coming and Matej Mitrovic.
Are you sure you want to bring Rafael in if, as you said earlier, he might just be a backup for Gökhan Gönül?
Well, I didn't say he was going to be a backup for Gökhan Gönül. What I said was that he would initially not be the first choice, because Gökhan Gönül has the tenure, and you know how Sinan Güneş is loyal to his players. But with Gökhan Gönül, him getting an injury is kind of an inevitability. So Rafael's going to get that chance, and I do see Rafael as someone who can earn that first place. And I think it's a good thing where you have two players of a comparable level where they can push each other and have a competitive environment to push each other to higher levels of performance. And I think Rafael can be a first choice. Now, if Opare comes in for Gökhan Gönül, then I do think that will be a backup. Then that will be a question of he'll play if Gökhan is injured, but when Gökhan is fit again, I don't think he'll play. Whereas with Rafael, I could see him
challenging.
Yeah, I could see him challenge Gökhan and maybe push Gökhan and overtake him, perhaps. Rafael does have a couple of years, is a couple of years younger, so Gökhan is aging a little bit. Plus, he has that injury proneness, which I keep referring to, but that's really a problem with Gökhan, and that's the main reason why Şenol Güneş wants someone to replace him. Not replace him, but to have an alternative to him. But we can't blame Güneş regardless, because you do need two players for that position, and we do have players who can play in that position, but that's not their natural role.
Yeah, we
had Adriano play there a lot, and then Jenner playing left back, and Adriano does really well at right back, I think, but I prefer Adriano at left back. I'm with you on that. But that's basically the whole right back situation. Then another thing, I'm gonna switch a little bit between transfers and contracts here.
Well, if I might quickly suggest, if how many years do you think Gökhan Gönül has in him, at a high level, at a starting level? 2 more seasons?
1 or 2. Probably.
Given that Rafael's 27, I think turning 28.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not, and I guess this is in a vacuum, like we don't know what kind of options are necessarily available to Beşiktaş, but would you not kind of theoretically at least prefer someone maybe a little bit younger who you could kind of put in a sort of development position and say, get in there, play backup, but like develop so that you're in that starting role in a year or two? Like you didn't just
No, because due to Gökhan's injury proneness, you need someone who's ready now,
yeah.
and not someone who's going to be ready in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
If Gökhan was an injury-free player, a relatively injury-free player, then yes, but he's not. And the fact of the matter is that whoever comes in as the backup to Gökhan, or whatever you want to call it, is probably going to play 20 to 30 games this season. So it needs to be someone who is ready enough. So you could bring in a slightly younger player, someone who's 25, but again, I think you need to look at our budget. And I think
that's
for
what
two,
I meant. Maybe like a 24, 25-year-old who's kind of, good, not great, but has maybe a higher ceiling than maybe Rafael.
Yeah, but are you going to be able to get that for under 4? I mean, does Beşiktaş even want to pay 4? I think Beşiktaş probably wants to pay maximum 3 or so. And can you get that? I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's possibilities out there, but I just think that Rafael's probably a decent enough option. And I don't think that his age is an issue. I mean,
no, 27 is a good age, honestly. It's his prime, theoretically, right?
That is theoretically his prime, yeah. Can differ from player to player, of course.
Yeah, okay. So next up, we have let's move from defense to attack. There's some news on the striker front. Some exciting, some interesting news. Kaan, what do you think?
But before we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, we should when we talk the good, the bad, and the ugly, we should probably talk about the bad or the ugly first. And I mean, relatively speaking, of course, Demba Ba, who we all kind of had already kind of planned into our fantasy team for next season, so to speak. He actually re-signed with Shenhua. So Shanghai Shenhua, the team that bought him from us for 13 million euros.
Where he suffered that horrific injury.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe psychologically it's good for him to go confront that, I guess, somehow. Although we know he's just going for the money. Let's be real.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, the money is undoubtedly going to be good. But I saw their little welcome back picture graphic they had for their website, and it said like 600 and something days. It's insane to think about that it's been that long since he actually last was under contract or last played for them. So he's going back there. It's official. So he definitely is off the table for us now. And then that other option we had, Burak Yilmaz, we already covered that last week, I believe. That he's kind of off the table too because
he wants too much.
He costs a lot in terms of money, but the main issue there is Trabzonspor wanting 4.5 million fee or something, and Beşiktaş aren't going to pay that for a 33-year-old Burak Yilmaz, who also has had his injury issues. So that's both those guys off the table. Both Demba Ba and Burak Yilmaz, which we already knew was kind of off the table. So that basically means that Beşiktaş will be bringing in a new player. So you could look at it.
One.
Yeah, but you could look at it. So I know some people were looking at it from this perspective, where we shouldn't be going back to players that already played for us before. Demba Ba's a step back, even though I think he left at its peak. But I mean, he's 33 years old right now, so I do kind of understand people saying it's a step back in a way. Although I don't.
You and I had formulated that he was a kind of podcast favorite in part because his age suggested Kyle Larin getting a larger role within the club as well, which is a big part of why I think he was, or him, or someone who maybe isn't so young, but who might be a little bit more affordable for the club, could be a value.
Yeah, I think we both agreed on that. We are excited of seeing Kyle Larin get his chance. But with this other name that's popped up this week, of course, that might not be the case. That might not be the case. The name, of course, is Bas Dost, the Dutch international, who has for the past 2 years played for Sporting Lisbon, and who has really, impressed. More than 50 goals scored in the league over 2 seasons. His first season, he scored 34 league goals in Portugal. Second season, 27. Both seasons, he's totaled more than 30 goals, obviously, in that first season, but also in the second season with European goals and Cup and all that stuff. So he's totaled more than 60 goals in 2 seasons. At a very comparable level, the Portuguese league, arguably on a similar level as the Turkish league, but the top teams consistently do better in Europe. So definitely a league that we shouldn't be knocking, because it's arguably on par or better than the Turkish league. So Bas Dost, done great. He, of course, one of the, I believe currently the count is at 6, it might be 7, I'm not 100% sure, but for those of you who missed it, some real controversy went down at Sporting Lisbon in the recent couple of months, in the last 2 months or so, where a bunch of players went and terminated their contracts with Sporting Lisbon because the players were attacked in their own training grounds by hooligans, masked hooligans from the club. And there's a strong belief that there's an involvement with the chairman, because the chairman has been extremely overly critical of the players, even suspended the entire squad after they couldn't beat Atletico Madrid in the Europa League. They lost, I think, 1-0 to Atletico, the eventual winners of the Europa League. And despite the fact that they actually played a really good match...
Yeah, that's pretty erratic behavior. Yeah, that's a very good result for a side like that.
He suspended the entire squad, like completely bonkers. And then when they lost to Benfica in the league, there's a certain portion of the fans, because they were in second position, they had that guaranteed Champions League ticket, and because they lost, I believe, to Benfica, they lost that guaranteed Champions League ticket, and Benfica took that.
That's the kind of thing that I would imagine could get players suspended, because the rivalry, the Benfica sport. I mean, not by a rational human being. Don't get me wrong, but I just know how passionate that rivalry is between Benfica and Sporting, and that could get people riled up, like kind of really. Yeah,
the fans got really upset by that, and afterwards attacked the players in the training ground. I believe that's roughly the timeline. I might be getting my timeline a little bit confused here, but regardless, so basically someone must have given those fans access to the training facilities, because those training facilities, you can't just walk in and out. Those people must have been given, they must have had help from inside. There's no way for them to get in otherwise. So the belief is, the belief is that the chairman was in cahoots, at least, or even
That's chilling. That's terrifying.
Yeah, but that's basically the belief, and that's where the grounds on which these players terminated their contracts, and these players include stars such as Rui Patricio, the Portuguese national team goalkeeper, William Carvalho, Portuguese national team midfielder, who is a starter. Now, of course, Bas Dost, Bruno Fernandes, who's also on the Portuguese national team. So about 6 players, and that's like maybe 100 million euros in terms of transfer value on the market. Those players all terminated their contracts on the grounds of what happened there with those fans, and the belief that there was at least some inside help to allow them access to the facilities and stuff like that.
I'd like to sort of add a personal anecdote to this, as the maybe the color commentator in the group, but I actually lived in Portugal and in Lisbon for most of a year when I was a bit younger, and the rivalry is very strong between Benfica and Sporting, and it doesn't surprise me much to hear about that kind of behavior, particularly from Sporting fans who have a really nasty reputation in Lisbon, as being the kind of side that's more apt to hooliganism and far right political leanings that have them sort of victimizing immigrant populations in Lisbon and stuff, and it's sad, but it's not terribly surprising to hear of that kind of behavior from that
Hmm.
particular fan base. It's sort of akin to the Lazio type of, school of thought.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate. You've said this before, and when politics and sports clash, it's always such a, uh, it's not good.
Yeah, I agree. But so basically, these players terminating their contracts on basis of that, which is in accordance to Portuguese labor law. Now, here where the problem is, they terminated their deals in accordance to Portuguese labor law, so they don't have approval from FIFA
Hmm.
as it currently stands. So them terminating their contracts right now is not approved by FIFA.
Whoa.
So that's where the problem lays. Beşiktaş supposedly, according to BN Sports, offered Bas Dost, I believe, a 3-year contract for 4 million euros a year. To put that in perspective, he's currently making 2 million euros a year at Sporting, and a signing bonus of 4 million euros. So that's a total of 12 million over 3 years plus 4 million, so 16 million euros in total for Bas Dost. Now, you have to put that into perspective in the
Yeah.
sense of that he is a free agent, so you're not paying a transfer fee. Because Bas Dost, I mean, his current market value is well over 20 million.
Yeah.
He's 29, I believe.
So in his prime.
So still in his prime, yes. But of course, I mean, it's a lot of money. So
I'd like to get into the money, though. I'd like to get into the finances on this because I've put some thought into this. Now, it sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, 16 million. But
it is
the
over
benefit
3
of
years.
the benefit of it is that it's not, because there's not a transfer fee with another club. It's not so loaded up front, and given Beşiktaş's financial situation, being able to spread out that kind of, that money over the 4 years, which enables them to sort of incentivize him coming to Beşiktaş, right? Like that's how you get a player of that quality at the age that he is, given his recent track record, etc. Again, like a striker of that value, who we'd have to purchase, probably already takes up most of that 16. Well, not 16 million.
So you won't get a player like that for 16
maybe,
million.
Right? I mean, so that in and of itself suggests that's worth it, because that's just the transfer fee, not even speaking to whatever he'd get like on a normal salary, like 2 million or whatever it would be, right?
Well, if they would be selling him, they'd be selling him for 40, 45 million right now. Like I said, his value is probably realistically around 20. But I mean, if they were to sell him, they'd probably be for 40, 45 million, given the performance he's put in recently. If we look at Islam Slimani, who was at Sporting before him, I think they got around 34 or something for him, and he had nowhere near the statistics that Bas Dost has. Now, I do want to add to that Bas Dost is a limited footballer, kind of like Mario Gomez, perhaps.
Before you scout him, though, just to wrap up the sort of the conversation on finance, the other element of this is, the 16 million that we're talking about paying him is sort of dependent upon him seeing out the 3 years on his contract. But bear in mind, he could have 2 amazing seasons with Beşiktaş, and someone comes in with an offer. And
realistically
then
speaking,
suddenly it's
probably we won't get more than 15 million, given that we're Turkey and that he'll be 30 plus by that time. But yeah, of course, definitely. I mean, this is still a player that has sell-on value. For me, the main issue here is you have to get rid of Negredo first, because Negredo is our top earner bar Pepe, and he simply isn't worth that money, and he needs to go.
Yeah.
He needs to be sold. If you want to bring in another striker on that type of a deal, you have to get rid of Negredo, and ideally you have to get rid of Love first. You have to get rid of both of them. That would free up about 6.5 million in terms of annual wage budget, and then you can bring in Bas Dost for 4 million a year. Now,
let me also interject that I personally would like to see both of those guys probably off the roster, no matter what.
I think most fans would. Yeah.
Let me temper that with I actually see a potential role for Negredo off the bench or even as a kind of secondary striker in some other kind of formation. But um, yeah,
Not for that money.
I definitely need to see a primary striker come in that, I mean,
Yeah.
Wagner Love for me like is a must go. He's got to get
But
a
we cannot afford our striker coming off the bench earning 4.2 or
no,
4.3
no,
million euros.
no, no.
That we cannot afford that, not without Champions League football, and even with Champions League football.
Yeah, it's
I
not
think,
wise.
yeah. I mean, I think we should have never gotten Negredo for that type of money to begin with if Şenol Güneş was going to prefer Cenk over him anyway. I don't think you should be bringing players in for that kind of wages unless you're going to make them very, very important for the team. If you're going to make Bas Dost the next Mario Gomez, so to speak, uh, yeah, then paying him that wage you can justify it. If you're going to have him on the bench for Kyle Aaron, then you can't. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Now the main question then is Bas Dost worth this money? Because a lot of people who know Bas Dost will say he's not worth that money because he's not really that good of a football player.
Yeah, that's kind of scouting. Yeah, tell me what you know about him as a footballer.
Look, he's limited technically. He's a target forward that scores a lot of goals, that scores easily with his head mainly, but also with his feet. I believe he is 2-footed. But technically, in terms of first touch, dribbling, passing, stuff like that, that's all subpar. Below.
So he's not making his own chances.
That's all. No, yeah, he's definitely not making his own chances. He's the type of player you need to feed the ball to. Now, is that worth 4 million a year? That depends. If he comes in and he scores 25, 30 goals and you win the league and you qualify for the Champions League, then I would say yes, definitely worth that type of money. And that's kind of the gamble you have to take. That's not something you know ahead of time. But given the player's track record of scoring and goals easily, and if you keep Ricardo Quaresma, I think with Ricardo Quaresma in your team, a guy like Bas Dost can flourish and score a ridiculous amount of goals. Plus, Ricardo Quaresma is going to get a ridiculous amount of assists.
Yeah.
And not just Quaresma, also Janner, of course, with his great crosses. He's great in a team that plays well over the wings, and I think we are a team that predominantly play over the wings. So for us, a guy like Bas Dost, I think, could be of great value. Yeah. So from that perspective, I would say if you get rid of Negredo, if you get possibly rid of Love, of both of those, definitely worth that gamble of investing 16 million euros in this guy. However, the big asterisk is what's going on with the contract status. Because until FIFA actually approves that termination, and the record will show that FIFA are much more inclined to side with clubs than they are with individual players, because that kind of has the possibility of setting a precedent. Now, granted, this is a very exceptional situation. However, they don't have hard proof that the president of Sporting was involved in those hooligans gaining access to the training facilities, which in turn makes people in Portugal very wary. The people who I spoke to, very wary of saying, well, this definitely is going to stick. These players will most likely be slapped with a sort of wrongful termination lawsuit that in turn will result in them having to pay compensation, which will be calculated on the remainder of their years of contract with the club and possibly their release clauses. Now, I'm not sure what Bas Dost's release clause is, but knowing Sporting, it's probably somewhere in the vicinity of 50 to 60 million. So that fine, if that would probably come on the player, but there's no way in hell the player is going to be able to pay that. So that'll probably triple down to the club that signs him.
Yeah.
So
that has China written all over it.
that has a potential disastrous effect. So I think that's also kind of why these players that we've heard that have terminated their contract with Sporting so far, that's why clubs haven't jumped on them yet.
Yeah.
So this is a very important aspect of this. If Beşiktaş's legal team can verify and with 100% certainty say, look, we aren't going to be in any sort of liability here, then I say go for it. But if Bas Dost is going to have to pay a huge fine, or if he's going to get suspended by FIFA or whatever, then you can't take that risk. Yeah, so you kind of are forced to, I mean, in a way, signing him now probably gives you the advantage because other teams will be wary.
Right.
Once that first player gets his approval from FIFA, the other ones are going to get that too, and then clubs are going to jump on these guys.
Man.
And I think everyone's going to want to take a gamble on Bas Dost right now, given his performance the last 2 years. So you're kind of in a difficult position here with, are we going to take that risk and sign him already before other clubs do, and just hope that FIFA sides with the players on this? Or are you going to hold off, wait until you're certain that they're not going to get suspended and that there's not going to be any liability lawsuits or whatever, but then risk the fact of another club moving in and coming in with a more tempting offer, or maybe sportively or financially. So it's a very difficult situation with Bas Dost right now. Like, it's a complicated situation, and I think a situation which most people aren't aware of, but a very serious situation.
And that suggests we'll have to probably keep our ears to the ground on this. Stay tuned. I'm sure there's going to be more news on strikers, and that means there are likely going to be more rumors popping up about other strikers that we're kind of looking on in the interim.
But if we're talking about ideal and people who are on the market available right now, and if Bas Dost is a free agent, I think you can't get any more ideal than Bas Dost unless you're going to sign Edin Dzeko or something. So I mean, for Beşiktaş, really, this would be the perfect signing, but the question is just how is it going to weigh off against the risks and stuff like that. I mean, purely financially speaking, if we get rid of Negredo, I am all for giving him that money. Yes, I mean, he's traditionally not the type of player that would be commanding that type of a wage, I guess, but the guy is, if you can give him the supply, he's a guarantee for goals. And that's something we desperately are going to need going into this next season with Talisca not returning.
Yeah, and so I mean, we'll have to stay tuned. I assume there's going to be some pressure on these guys to sort of try to wrap deals up as soon as possible for the sake of the European side. But as we've said, they're notoriously cautious. So you really don't
plus you need to keep in mind that those first two rounds of qualifiers will probably play against relatively modest sides. I think we both are quite high on Kyle Larin. I think he should be more than capable of finishing those teams off.
Just to tie this into not necessarily a rumor, but there have been a number of images emerging on the internet of Kyle Larin training. He's in the facilities. It seems like he is amped, for the season. He's getting geared up for it, and it looks like the club or someone over there is maybe suggesting that he's kind of excited for a role with the club. So.
It really reminded me of those pre-season training sessions that Cenk Tosun was reporting, and Kyle Larin's working hard, and so Gökhan Töre has also been putting out those types of videos. Yep. So those guys are working really hard to get ready for the new season, and let's hope that I really have high hopes for Larin. And the thing is. Yeah,
sorry,
sure.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I really I'm kind of really on the fence. I want to see him get his chance, but the other hand, you can't say no to a Bas Dost, and that's where I'm really kind of torn.
I think if you get a game changer, if you get a game changer like Bas Dost, you have to go for it. And what that does is it puts us in a position to immediately challenge for the Europa League. I think if you get a Bas Dost, that shapes your whole transfer window in terms of gearing towards that, right?
Yeah, I think it gives you a special. It definitely gives you a little bit of a better chance for sure. Like I said already, a Bas Dost in combination with Ricardo Quaresma, that is a potential. That has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
But let's move on to.
Don't forget John Erkin launching in
Yeah.
this process.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move on. Also, so central midfielder.
Yeah.
There's some very concrete rumors coming out.
Yes.
Another, speaking of a returning former Beşiktaş player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can't get any more concrete than this. I mean, the Fikret Orman, Beşiktaş president, basically spoke about it publicly, and he confirmed that Manuel Fernandes wants to come back, and he even said, we want to give him that chance. We had a really good experience with Ricardo Quaresma coming back, so we want to give Manuel Fernandes that same opportunity. However, Beşiktaş are in a position right now where they aren't going to be offering insane money, and that's funny coming off the Bas Dost rumors. But strikers are always a little bit different. But Beşiktaş have apparently made Manuel Fernandes a contract offer, which I find a little bit odd, since that he still has a remaining year with Lokomotiv Moscow. But Beşiktaş have basically presented him with, look, if you want to come, we are willing to take you back, and we want to give you $2 million a year for 2 years plus an optional third year. Yeah. And Manuel Fernandes is the asking party in this, so to speak, but he has said he will decide on his future after the World Cup.
So that's it for the sort of Manuel Fernandes. And then so the last piece of that central the last piece of the center of our midfield that we have yet to discuss is maybe the best part of it all, the best news, the most concrete news.
Yeah, that does bring us to our last point of Oğuzhan Özyakup. We mentioned it in our previous episode before we did our World Cup previews, where I said that he definitely extended 100%, happened months ago. Since then, Fikret Orman has come out as well. He has confirmed that he has extended. And now...
Yeah, we need some sort of victory. I'm going to cue some victory music up here. This is great.
But more importantly now, the Turkish Football Federation has officially extended his license until 2022. That means the official paperwork has been filed with the Turkish Football Federation, so this is done and dusted now.
Yes.
Beşiktaş have not yet, as of the recording of this, have not released any financial details. They haven't, I don't even think they have released a public disclosure announcement yet, but the Turkish Football Federation have already extended his license, so that means it's done.
I wonder why they wouldn't have announced it yet. Is there any possibility they're trying to couple it with another announcement of some sort? Maybe.
I don't know. I don't think that's really something there. But the whole announcement on the disclosure platform, it's a little complicated. You don't need to announce stuff under a certain financial value, so to speak. So anyway, we don't have the official numbers, but BN Sports are reporting that the contract for 4 years is at $2 million a year.
Okay,
so
that's a good number. That's a good number.
That's very good. I initially had the information that he had a $2.5 million contract, which also still I think is something he kind of earned. But $2 million a year.
Just to tie in why that would be good. We've mentioned this in previous episodes, but the club is sort of generally trying to bring down the average wages of players. Historically we've paid a lot for not.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind. I mean, he's basically, principally, he's being bumped up.
Yeah.
Because he's coming from like 1.5 or something.
But it's sort of he's gonna take. He's clearly sort of being primed for a more central role with the club, assuming he stays.
His status has changed with the club, so him getting bumped up is normal. But you have to look at it this way: he's now a key player. He has been for 2 years.
He's entering his prime, right?
Yeah, he's a key player in his prime. And for us to pay him 2 million, I think that's if you look at Quaresma, if you look at Babel, they're making like 2.3 or something. But that's not all that important, because this is a very important part as well, which beIN Sports are reporting, is that he has a release clause. Oğuzhan has a 12 million euro release clause, which isn't super high. I think after our first championship, we were all kind of thinking, oh, wow, Oğuzhan, amazing. And then last season, even, he had a good season still, despite not impressing in the Champions League because of that groin injury. But I think still we were looking at 20 plus for Oğuzhan. And we did ultimately end up getting 20 plus for Cenk now. But I think realistically speaking, we have to just accept that Oğuzhan this season hasn't had the best of seasons. And it is probably, I said this before, I know 100% for sure that he has extended, but I am far from certain that he will stay. In fact, I believe I said something along the lines of, I'm pretty sure that he's leaving. Yeah. And that's where this 12 million euro buyout clause comes into play.
Yeah, so we can guarantee we're getting something in exchange. And I think by waiting for his contract to expire and then re-signing, we're out of sort of the sticky situation of owing Arsenal a large
30%.
percentage.
Yeah, 25%.
So the news is good, whether he stays or not.
Yeah, definitely. But it's like I said, this contract extension is not so much about giving him his due in terms of money, not about will he stay, will he go. It's more about Beşiktaş getting money for his sale. That's what this is about. I think the buyout clause is put at a relatively low number for a player of this quality as sort of thank you for his service. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of a sign of goodwill from Beşiktaş and a sign of goodwill from Oğuzhan's part. From Oğuzhan, it's a great show of loyalty and respect for the club, recognition of what the club has done for him as a player, and from the club, it's a great show of recognition and respect of recognition of what he has done for the club as a player. Mm-hmm. And I think 12 million, he might be worth more. But I think it's a very fair number, and I think if a club really wants him, a Premier League club or something, they're not going to, 12 million, just pay it, trigger that lease clause, pay it, and get him. And
easy peasy. Yeah, and the most concrete rumors I've heard are that Everton could be sort of circling, which makes
there's
sense.
A couple
the idea of coupling him with Cenk, I could see that being a very promising concept for a club like Everton to pursue.
There's a couple of clubs that are linked. Newcastle United have been linked repeatedly since January. Yeah. Fulham are being linked, who are being promoted back up to the Premier League. And of course, Everton are being linked. I'm sure that there's a lot of mid-table Premier League sides that will be interested in someone like Oğuzhan. Sure. So for everyone listening, I wouldn't go out and buy your Oğuzhan Özyakup shirt if you want to.
Unless you already have one, which I do. I have one. He's been a favorite of mine for some time, so don't be embarrassed by the concept.
No, of course. I'm just saying, if you want to have his name on one of the new shirts of the new season, please do know that he might not be here. Although he is part of the Adidas campaign that will be releasing shortly, I think, with our new season's shirts, which will be announced soon.
This whether or not this actually lends itself to him staying or not, it's clear that he's going to be in the sort of campaign of unveiling the new shirts, which I think typically they look for sort of central players on the team, so it gives like maybe a glimmer of hope to anyone who's looking for it, but it shouldn't really. It's not a very realistic one.
Shouldn't be an indication of anything like that. I think that basically covers all what we have to talk about this week. We covered the main transfer stories. We covered the World Cup games where our players were involved in, and the big news of Oğuzhan Özyakup's official extension with the club. Yeah. That'll do for episode 7, I think.
Yeah. That's it's a full episode right there. Lots to discuss, but I think we've covered it all. Yeah, I think.
Okay, then just one more thing for those of you listening. We will shortly be starting to upload all our episodes to YouTube as well.
Oh,
And our new episodes will release on YouTube automatically. That's something that should already be done, but we still have to upload the older ones. So, if you have friends that aren't really into podcast apps but are on YouTube all the time, you can show them our podcast, of course, on YouTube. There's lots of other stuff that I still have to plug, I guess. You can follow Beşiktaş International at Beşiktaş_int. You can follow Sinan at Sir_writes_a lot. You can follow me at Razerian, RAZZERIAN.
the Z is back.
And you can follow the podcast's own Twitter account at Eagles_podcast. And I'm just thinking, is there anything else we need to plug? I don't really think so.
Go outside, get outside, get some sun as the seasons change for us in the Northern Hemisphere, and watch the World Cup. Scout, get to know the world of football beyond Beşiktaş. Who knows? Like among the players you're watching, who could end up with a Beşiktaş shirt come the beginning? I mean, don't get your hopes up too high, because this is typically a very high quality of player, but you never know. You never know who could be joining the team. So
very true.
And watch the game.
And before
have fun.
before I forget, please give us an iTunes review.
Yeah.
That really helps a lot. That helps the podcast bump up in the charts, so to speak. So it will really help us a big deal if you can give us an iTunes review. So I think that's the final word I'm gonna have to say. So Sinan will leave you with his usual.
Go Beşiktaş, guys.
Şimdi Bobo'nun önüne. Bobo aldı. Bobo girdi. Bobo